Hello and welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris and this is a complete features and settings guide for the DJI Mavic Air 2. I'm going to be going through all the options available to you for both photo and video and all the settings available in the app so that when you pick up your DJI Mavic Air 2 you're instantly ready to go out and fly. Let's get straight into it. So when you connect the drone to the controller, this is the first thing you'll see, and on the left here is a takeoff button. So if you click that, you can hold this button and it will take off. I'm not going to do that right now. Up the top then we have a few different little indicators. So on the top right we have the GPS indicator. This shows you how many GPS bars of signal you have. I think it's 8 you need to take off safely with the GPS mode on. Next to that you have the battery indicator there. You see I have 96% on the battery, and next to that where those two lines are right now is where when you're in the air you'll see the time that you have left to fly. This is only an estimate and obviously depends on the wind and things like that, but that will show you the remaining time you have left to fly the drone. On the bottom left when you're flying here it will tell you how high you are and how far you are away from the controller. On the bottom right then you have your exposure, and this is set to auto at the moment, but if you click the little auto button in the bottom right you can change it to manual, and from there you can change your ISO and your shutter speed. Obviously you can't change the aperture because it is a fixed aperture on this drone. So firstly we'll go into the features and the different shooting modes on this drone, and if you click this little button on top of the shutter button here, that shows you all the features you get in photo and video mode. So start off with photo. And at the top here in the sub menu you'll see single photo. This literally just takes a single 12 megapixel photo, and this is probably the simplest option. Underneath that you have 48 megapixel photo. Again, self-explanatory, it takes a 48 megapixel photo. It does take this in 4:3 as it uses the full width of the sensor, and it's a little bit sharper but might suffer a bit more in low light. Underneath that we have smart photo. And Smart Photo will take a 12 megapixel photo, but will also adjust exposure and stuff in different areas to try and compensate for that small sensor size. Underneath that we have auto exposure bracketing, and in the sub menu you can change that to 3 or 5 photos. This will just take a couple of photos of different exposures, and later on you can go into Photoshop or Lightroom and make a HDR photo from them. Underneath that you can have burst mode, and as you see in burst mode in the sub menus you can choose between 3, 5 or 7 burst photos, and this just allows you to take multiple photos if you're shooting a fast moving subject, and you just need to take a lot of photos and choose the best one afterwards. And lastly then we have the timed shot, which allows you to choose any time between 2 seconds and 60 seconds to take a photo. So let's go down to video mode, and if you haven't heard, this drone does do 4K at 60 frames per second. So at the top there is the option for 4K, and then you can choose your frame rate here in the sub menu, and it does go up to 60 frames, and it's the same with 2.7K and 1080p. Underneath that then we have HDR, and I'm really enjoying using the HDR mode at the moment. It's for those times where you need a little bit more dynamic range. That is only available up to 4K at 30 frames per second. It does increase the dynamic range quite a lot, and it makes those colours a little bit more punchier. And at the bottom we have slow motion, which is at 1080p. It can be used at 120 frames per second or 240 frames per second. And to be honest, I'd only use these in a pinch. The quality difference is significant, and you know, on anything more than a phone or anything bigger than a phone, you're going to notice that the quality isn't as good as the 2.7K or the 4K. So only use this if you're trying to capture really fast moving subjects and you really need that super slow-mo. Underneath video mode then you have the quick shots, which have been available in DJI drones for quite a while, but they can't be used when you're not in air. So I'm going to cut to the drone in the air and talk about those quick shots. Okay, so this is some stuff I filmed a couple of days ago, and at the time of filming quick shots were only available at 1080p at 30 frames per second. Now they're available in 4K, but everything you'll see here will be at 1080p scaled up to 4K. So the first quick shot is the droney. This will make the drone go backwards and ascend, which is great for when you're focusing on one subject and you want to go back and reveal the whole background. And as you can see in the sub menus here, you can actually change the height that the drone will ascend to. Once you've picked the quick shot that you want, all you have to do is draw a square around the subject that you want the quick shot to focus on. In this case it's recognised me as a person, so all I have to do is tap this and it automatically draws a square around me. Then once you press start, the drone will automatically start recording, and it will start the quick shot after 3 seconds. Once the quick shot is finished, it will stop recording and the drone will return to the point where the quick shot was started. The next quick shot is rocket, and this is where the drone flies vertically upwards while looking down on the subject. Again, here in the sub menus you can change the height that you want the drone to stop at. In this case it hasn't recognised me as it's shooting me from above, so I'm having to draw a square around myself, to get the drone to recognise me as a subject. This does take slightly longer, but for the purposes of the video I'm going to speed this up. The next Quickshot is a circle, and self-explanatory, it literally flies in a circle around the subject and maintains a constant altitude. Again, I'm going to speed this up just so the video isn't longer than it already needs to be. The next Quickshot is Helix. Helix will literally fly the drone in a spiral, coming outwards away from the subject while also ascending higher. Again, this is sped up for the sake of the video, and I know I keep saying that, but what I'm trying to say is the drone films it at a normal pace and you can do what you want with it in post-production. Next is Boomerang, which literally flies like a boomerang by going up and around you and coming back down to meet you where it first started. The final one is Asteroid, and though I really like this effect, I don't think it's one that many people will be using, especially in professional environments. But what it does is it'll ascend to maximum height, and then it will take a big sphere panorama. It'll put the video and those photos together by taking lots of photos in the air like you see here, and then it'll make a short little quick shot looking like this. Next then is Hyperlapse, and there's a few different options for Hyperlapse. There's free mode where the drone will stay still and capture a hyperlapse. There's circle where you'll pick a subject and the drone will circle around the subject. There's course lock where you can set the drone to go one specific direction while it's taking the hyperlapse, or you can set waypoints by flying your drone to one place, setting the waypoint, flying it to another place, setting the waypoint, and it'll fly between those while it's capturing the hyperlapse. You'll notice when you're in hyperlapse mode you get these little options at the bottom, and that is the interval that you want to take the photos at, the length that you want the whole film to be, and the maximum speed of the drone. And at the top here it will show you the duration that it will take to actually take the hyperlapse and the amount of frames that you'll get from the video. The last feature available then is the Pano mode, and again I can't show you this until I'm up in the air, so I'm going to cut to the drone up in the air and talk you through the panorama modes. And the first option here is sphere. The drone will fly around in a circle, taking lots of photos of the sky and the ground, and will create a nice little 360 photo. Initially the photo will look like this, but if you import it to your phone or a compatible device, you can view it in other ways, for example in 360 mode like this. Or just in a sphere mode where you can zoom in and out of the sphere like a little tiny planet. Or in stretched mode like this. The next panorama mode is a 180-degree photo, and again just put the drone where you want it and it will take the photos on its own and it'll produce a little image like this. It's a bit distorted, but it does look pretty epic. Next we have the wide angle panorama, which isn't as wide as the 180-degree, but definitely looks a bit less distorted. Finally we have the vertical panorama, pretty self-explanatory, but instead of shooting a wide shot horizontally, it shoots a wide shot vertically. The end result is, again, pretty epic shot looking like this. I just want to take a minute to say if you're enjoying this or finding it informative in any way, then give this video a thumbs up. And if you want to see more videos like this, then do hit that subscribe button down below. It'll be much appreciated. So let's get into settings now then, and these three dots on the top right take us to the settings menu, and the first thing we have here is the safety menu. The first thing in the safety menu allows you to set the maximum altitude and the maximum distance that you want to fly. In the UK there are certain laws on this, but the drone will fly further than these UK laws, so if you do want to set the maximum distance so you don't accidentally fly past it, then you can do that here. You can also set a return to home altitude, and that is when, let's say you're out of the drone but you need to return it to home ASAP, you can press the return to home button, then it will climb to whatever this altitude is you've got set here and come back to you. You can set this depending on if there's any really tall trees around you that it needs to climb above before it comes to home, and it's quite useful for those sort of moments. Here you can update the home point, and it's quite useful because if you're flying the drone and someone comes into the area that you were going to land at, you can set the home point to a different area, and then once you're done flying the drone will land at that different area. So updating the home point is quite useful, and it'll also be your return to home area as well. Next we have the flight assistance, which you can turn on the obstacle detection and APAS system. This is good for if you've got it tracking you and it's sort of flying on its own. It will use those sensors inside it to avoid any obstacles. Here you can also calibrate the sensors such as the compass and the IMU, and the compass with the Mavic Air needed resetting quite a lot. So far I haven't had to do it with this. The IMU just involves putting the drone in different positions and it will calibrate that automatically. You will need to do this after a few flights just to make sure everything is fully calibrated and working properly. Underneath that you can turn the LED on. I don't know if you'll be able to see it in this light, but there is an LED on the bottom there. It's probably more noticeable in the dark. I just have that on auto and it will turn on if it gets too dark. You can also unlock your geo zone here, so if there's an area where you have permission to fly but perhaps the drone says you don't, you can unlock that area in there. And you can turn on remote identification if you want people to be able to identify your drone while it's in the air. And the Find My Drone feature is quite good because it will find your drone via GPS, and you can also set it to start flashing and beeping if you think you're near it but you can't necessarily see it. So quite a handy feature there if you end up landing your drone somewhere unexpectedly. Finally, we get the advanced safety settings, which allows you to set what happens when the signal is lost. I keep it to return to home, so if I do lose signal, the drone will automatically come to where I took it off from. And you can also change the controls to set an emergency propeller stop in case you need to stop the drone straight away. Moving over to the control settings then, and the first thing you can do is change the units from metric to imperial if you wanted to. Underneath that you have the gimbal mode. I set it to follow, which means that the gimbal remains horizontally even when the aircraft is moving. So when you're moving forwards, for example, the gimbal will stay exactly the same even though the drone is sort of pitching forwards or backwards. In FPV mode, the gimbal will follow whatever the drone is doing. And here you can also calibrate the gimbal if you wanted to as well. Let's say it's slightly wonky or it's off to the side, or maybe it's not exactly straight. You can calibrate that if you need to. And again, that's something you'll probably have to do after a good few flights just to make sure that everything is working as it should do. Underneath that you have the stick mode for the remote controller, and this is basically exactly the same as changing settings, changing controller settings on the Xbox or on a game. There's different preset modes, but you can also change to a custom mode if you wanted to change the controls to your own needs there. I keep it on mode 1. Underneath the stick mode you can also calibrate the remote controller. Let's say you're in the air and your drone's flying one direction and you can't really figure out why. It could be because your controller is not calibrated and one of the sticks is set slightly off. So that's the first thing you do in that situation. And underneath that you have a flight tutorial. If you're brand new to flying a drone, then I'd recommend looking at this flight tutorial just to show you through the ropes. Let's move on to the camera settings now, and at the top we have the format, and this will change depending on what mode you're in. So at the moment we're in photo mode and I want to be taking the photos in JPEG and RAW. You can also take it in just JPEG if you just want to transfer it to your phone and edit it on your phone quickly. And you can also change between 16:9 and 4:3. Let's change that to video mode just so you can see the settings that come up in video mode. So here you can change the format between MP4 and MOV. And you can change the color mode from normal to D-Cine-like. D-Cine-like is just a flatter picture profile, which is better for color grading. But at the moment I keep it in normal because I'm just testing what the normal colors are like on the drone. Also in the video mode is the coding format, which is set to H.265. The anti-flicker, which obviously will depend on what area you are filming in. So if you're filming in the US, you'd have it at 60 Hz, and if you're filming somewhere in the UK, you'd have it at 50 Hz. This is normally where you have the NTSC and the PAL differences, but they just call it anti-flicker. I keep it on auto and it's always done a good job for me. Let's scroll down to general here, and you can see all the different things that you can add to help you in your filming experience. So you can add a histogram if you want to, and that adds it at the side here, and you can move it around if it's in the way. You can also add an overexposure warning if you're shooting in manual exposure. This is good because sometimes your phone screen might be darker or it might be brighter, and you might not be able to see exactly if you're overexposed or not. So the warning can help you decide that. You can choose to auto sync HD photos to your phone, and you can also have grid lines here. if you want help in framing. So you've got the option between the rule of thirds, the cross and a dot in the middle, just so that you know where the middle of the frame is there. Underneath that you have your white balance. I've got it set to auto because I don't want to white balance every time I'm flying, but you can set it to manual if you want to. And then finally we have the storage. I've got it saved into an internal SD card, but the good thing about this drone is it does have internal storage. It has 8 GB of internal storage, so if you do forget your SD card, and we've all been there, you can actually record to the internal storage, and I found that's plenty of space. Finally, in the camera mode, we have cache when recording, and this is basically the cache on your phone. What it does is when you're recording or taking photos, it will automatically save a lower quality version to your phone. This is great for example, when I'm out shooting for clients. Once I've finished with the drone, I'll land it, and then I'll get my phone out and I'll show the clients the low quality version, just so they know what the shot looks like. Underneath that, you can choose the capacity that you want it to take up on your phone. So for example, I've got it set to 2 GB. When it reaches 2 GB of space on my phone, it will start deleting old files to make yeah, the problem with shooting outside is bugs can just land on your head at any time. Okay, so once it reaches the 2 GB, it will start deleting old files to make room for new files. Next, let's move over to transmission here. In the transmission menu, you can set the definition. So what this does, I've got it set to HD at the moment, which makes sure I've got the best quality transmission to my phone. So I'm seeing the best quality image here, but I can also set it to smooth. Let's say I'm in a spot where the signal is not so great, I'm losing signal all the time. I can set this to smooth, which will decrease the quality of the transmission, but will probably help with the signal. With frequency, I've got it set to dual band, and I'd keep it like this, to be honest. It just makes sure that it can switch between them if it needs to. And underneath that, you can see just how stable your connection is. The final menu in the settings menu is the about menu, and here you can just change the name of your drone. You can see if you're on the latest firmware on both the aircraft, the FlySafe and the remote control, and you can see what app version you're in. Also interestingly, you can see how many times the battery has been charged. Confusingly, it says 0 on mine, so I don't know if this feature actually works yet, because I have charged this battery now a few times, which is a bit strange. But here you can pretty much see the status of your drone. So the last feature I want to show you is active track and following, and you can do that by drawing a square around the subjects you want to follow. And in spotlight mode, you can move the drone around as you wish and the gimbal will follow that object. So that's good, but you can also move it to active track mode. And this is where the drone and the gimbal will do all the work. So you can literally put the controller down and the drone and the gimbal will follow the object. This is good for solo shooters, for example, who want to shoot their bike ride or them climbing a mountain. They can literally draw a square around themselves on the app and the drone will follow them as they're hiking or as they're riding. So that's been all the features and all the settings on the DJI Mavic Air 2. Hopefully it's helped you so that when you pick up your drone you can get straight in, dial in the settings you want and take it straight out to fly. Again, some of the settings are only available once you're already flying, and it's not ideal getting used to a drone when it's already in the air. So hopefully that has helped you on your first flight as well. If you've got any questions, then leave them down below in the comments section and I'll be sure to get back to you. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you want to see more videos like this, then be sure to subscribe. Thanks for watching and I'll see you in the next one.